Everyone, I'm Michelle Easton, president of the Clare, Boothe, Luce Policy Institute, and I want to thank you for joining us and welcome you to October Conservative Women's Network. Special thanks to our partner, the Heritage Foundation, Becky Dunlop. We've been putting this on for years, and it's such a pleasure to work with such a fine organization as the Heritage Foundation. Now, I am so happy today to introduce today's speaker, Kate Obenshain. I know you've all seen Kate on Fox News, where she's a passionate, articulate defender of conservative values. She's also been one of the Luce Policy Institute's most popular campus speakers for many years, and she's been speaking and mentoring young women that we work with for decades. And she's helped me out so many times at the Luce Institute, helped the Luce Institute out so many times too, and I'm very grateful to you, Kate, for that. She's also been in almost all of our great American conservative women calendars, and our 2013 calendar's out. We did a little differently this year with not only beautiful women, but beautiful scenes of America. And here's Kate from March of 2013, and the quote on her page from Clare Boothe Luce: "Courage is the ladder on which all other virtues mount." That was Clare Boothe Luce, and other great ladies have spoken about courage as well. Kate, we love having you in our calendar. Now, Kate today is going to be talking about how, despite lofty claims of unity, the left is really dividing America with their radical policies. Kate's not just a regular guest on Fox News, but on many other TV stations as well. I saw her on Larry Kudlow just earlier this week on CNBC. She appears on many radio shows. She speaks all over the country. And at the Clare Boothe Luce Policy Institute, we're especially honored to have Kate as a member of our board of directors. Kate came out of the University of Virginia, where she wrote for the conservative paper there, and she was a student leader organizing campus events and one giant statewide event, right? She came to Young America's Foundation right out of college, and she took a lecture program, which was small, and made it into the biggest, best lecture program in the country. Then she left YAF for some other important things, and then she came back and served as the vice president for a number of years until quite recently. Kate was also the chairman of the Virginia Republican Party from 2003 to 2006. And in that capacity, she garnered national attention when she led the charge against tax increases and expanding the role of government. The Virginia Republican Party had been going through some pretty rough times about then. It was a scandal that one of the leaders had done some... Yes, before Kate, unauthorized taping, but she straightened it out and set the party for smooth sailing. She then served as Senator George Allen's chief of staff, and while she was working for Governor Allen as his chief education and health advisor. That's when she recommended me for the Virginia State Board of Education, and he appointed me to that. And she also got to work with Becky Dunlop at that point, because Becky was serving in the cabinet of George Allen as well. So we got to work with Kate on state level issues as well. Now, Kate is the author of a new book, right there, called Divider in Chief: The Fraud of Hope and Change. And we're selling the book outside, and she'll be signing copies for you if you like after she speaks. Kate was born into a family of conservative leaders and activists in Virginia. She's a graduate of UVA, as I said. She resides in Winchester with 4 extraordinarily wonderful children, especially her youngest daughter, who is one of the most gracious young ladies I've ever seen. I want her for myself, but I get to visit with her every now and then. But a wonderful activist for our cause. Please join me in welcoming Kate Obenshain.
Thank you all so much. It is wonderful to be here. Okay, if we're going to talk about courage, then I just have to point you to these 2 ladies sitting here with me. What a joy it was to get to know Becky Dunlop when I worked in the Allen administration during a real revolution. It was a great restoration of our conservative ideals. Virginia had been going through a difficult time, and George Allen came in and just championed the great reforms of abolishing parole, implementing academic standards, reforming welfare so that this crazy thing where you have to work for your welfare benefits, which now, of course, is completely watered down. But Becky was part of the revolution, and I will tell you, as Secretary of Health and Human Resources, there was no issue that she was unwilling to tackle, and that is a tough area for conservatives. She was out there on the front lines during the entire administration, and she was an inspiration for me and for a lot of other conservatives, but particularly for conservative women. And I just want to thank Becky for her noble service to the Commonwealth and also to the country. Thank you. Michelle, I have known for years and years and years since I started at Young America's Foundation as a wee one, just having graduated from the University of Virginia. And she is someone who has managed to combine career and family in the most professional and noble manner. She has these 3 incredible young men as her sons, and she has always put her family first, her husband and her boys. But she also puts the cause of freedom first. And you know, that is something when I talk to groups of young women, I really want to impress upon you how important that is. I chose originally to stay home with my children, but to still be involved. I was still on the State Council of Higher Education, but my goal was to raise my children. And then I got this crazy phone call when I had 4 children under 5. Okay, so 4 little people under 5 and under. They were 5 and under, as my mother points out frequently. My little girl, I had 3 boys and this precious little baby girl, and I was so happy. Life was exactly like it was supposed to be. And I got this very irritating phone call from George Allen saying, Kate, we need you. We need you to run for state party chairman in Virginia. I was like, no, that's not happening. I am a very busy woman, and I'm happy the way it is. And of course, you know, George Allen, you can't say no probably more than once because he doesn't give up, because he fights for what he believes in. And so finally I said, fine, okay. And so I ran for party chairman, won, and spent the next 3 years traipsing all over Virginia fighting for conservative ideas. And the thing I want to impress upon you is, as hard as that was, as a mom of young children, I would not change it, because it is so important for us to get engaged in the battle. If we don't, nobody else will, and we are passionate about conservatism. We have a unique degree of passion because we are moms, so many of us. Even if you're not moms, you're passionate. But we are passionate because we want to pass liberty on, not only intact, but maybe even expanded. Pass that on to our children and our children's children. So even if you embrace that more traditional role and are looking forward to that, please do not think that you can get out of activism and out of being involved. We need you in this battle from here on out. It's too important. What we're standing up for is too important. So I want to thank the Clare Boothe Luce Policy Institute. One of my favorite things is to travel around the country talking on college campuses, because college students are on the front lines of the battle, and it is so important what you all do, standing up for young conservatism, giving them the courage that they need. I did just write this new book that Michelle held up, The Divider in Chief, The Fraud of Hope and Change. And I did it because, let's see, I was talking to Catherine Lopez, a National Review online. I did an interview with her not too long ago, and she said, Kate, why did you write this? Is it meant to be an awakening, something like that? And I said, you bet it is. It stuns me that around half of the American population completely fell for this empty mantra of hope and change. The Obama administration was going to be that transcendent administration that brought us all together. That is why Barack Obama earned the White House, because he said he was going to be the great uniter. Remember that beautiful inaugural address, and it was glorious, where he said to conservatives, I want to listen to you, especially when we disagree. Okay, nice, beautiful, beautiful idea. And he was going to meet with conservatives in Congress once a week. That was a great idea, too. He met two times. So 3 days after that beautiful speech, the conservatives in Congress came to the White House and they had a meeting. And Eric Cantor, a congressman from Virginia, articulated the conservative perspective on increasing taxes, that we shouldn't do that. And you know what Obama said, 3 days after, I want to listen to you, especially when we disagree? He said, Eric, I won, you lost, I trump you on that. Then about a week later, he said, I want the folks who got us into this mess to do a whole lot less talking and a lot more listening. You can talk a little bit, but I want you really to stay on the sidelines while we try to clean this up for you. Unbelievable. Gone was any notion of unifying the country, of bringing us together. Instead, there came this steady mantra of attack and vilify the other side. No ideas. It was not idea-based. Just like his 2008 campaign for president was not idea-based. It was hope and change, glorious, lofty speeches with no substance whatsoever. The only substance was that he was going to unify us, be that post-partisan president. And yet, almost immediately, it was conservatives are hostage takers. They are the enemy. They care only about millionaires and billionaires and not children with autism and Down syndrome. Now, what was this approach? Why? Did Obama and his administration just come in wanting to vilify the other side just with this intense hatred? It was bringing to the administration that philosophy of a community organizer. For years, Obama has said, I'm still a community organizer just at the national level. Well, this was the one qualification that I think Obama brought to the administration, if you can even call it a qualification for being president, was that he was a community organizer. He was a darn good one. Absolutely. He was known by his fellow community organizers as the master of agitation. Now, this is really important because this is the essence of how he views the world. Obama would go into a community and he would identify an enemy for that group, for that community. And he would stoke their animosity, fuel it, and really generate this angst, anger, and even hatred. And while everybody's all riled up, hating some organization or some person or whatever it is that he focused their attention on, he rammed through his agenda. No discussion, no need for any debate or discourse, but it was all based on distract everybody, get them focused on some entity, and then ram through whatever you want. Well, look, that's exactly what he has done at the national level. For the past 4 years, there has been no philosophical back and forth, no dynamic, free and open exchange of ideas. Now look, I wrote this book called Divider in Chief, not because I am attacking division in politics. I'm all for it. Anybody who watches Fox News, MSNBC, I love it. When it is based on ideas. That is the essential premise of our country, that we are free to have that dynamic and vigorous exchange. Our founding fathers were not sitting around singing Kumbaya. They were duking it out with a very different philosophy. And because they were able to have this mutual respect and have this, and it wasn't always respect, but because they were able to fight it out based on ideas and philosophy, we now live in the greatest, most prosperous nation on the face of the earth because their ideas, the best ideas, were able to triumph because reason was left free to combat ideas that weren't that great. But that is what's happening now. We are losing the ability for reason to be free to combat bad ideas. Do you ever hear the Obama administration defending why it works to raise taxes on small businesses or on individuals who are successful? Do you ever hear them say, okay, this, from an economic standpoint, this is how we will generate more income and sustain it? No, for one, because it doesn't generate more income. It will only generate less income. But it is indefensible. And so instead of actually trying to articulate a defense of their economic policies, they rip us apart. They divide us. They start vilifying conservatives as hating poor people and the middle class. This whole class warfare thing, by the way, ripping us apart based on economic status. I was sitting there watching Obama give a speech the other day. Well, it was actually a couple months ago. And he said 12 times the middle class in this speech. What is with pigeonholing us into the middle class? And he loves to say, I want to help you Americans, you little people is what he means. You people get into the middle class and stay there. Okay, first of all, why is it the President of the United States' responsibility to decide what class I should be in? I should have dreams to achieve whatever level of income and greatness that I want to. And this country provides me the opportunity that I have a pretty good shot of achieving my dreams. Play by the rules, work hard, have some chutzpah, and you can build it. You can achieve greatness. But this president instead tears us apart and villainizes those who have succeeded. Do you know what he says the problem is in our society? The breathtaking greed of the few. That is an amazing, amazing thing. To condemn those who have achieved success in our society. We honor success in this culture, but he vilifies it so he can ram through the notion that we need to punish these people with higher taxes. That is his justification. There's something wrong with these people. They got there through ill-gotten gains, so we must punish them. No economic rationale for it. And then you have conservatives arguing for lowering taxes, since we have the highest corporate tax rate in the world, and the rationale for why that works. Why, from an economic standpoint, that produces more prosperity. How it worked under Ronald Reagan, how Jack Kennedy did it, and how it worked. But you don't hear the same argument coming from this administration. They can't argue the facts because the facts do not back them up. They also can't come forward and have an honest discussion about what their objectives are. Whereas conservatives will argue our objective is to elevate everybody by increasing prosperity, by unleashing the private sector from overbearing, not reasonable, but overbearing government regulations so that everybody can prosper. We believe there's an unlimited ability for prosperity. The left believes that it's a fixed amount, it's a pie, and everybody gets a little slice of it and it's never going to get any bigger. That's not how we see things. But you don't hear the left articulating a response to that discussion because what Obama wants to do is force redistribution. And if he were honest about that, honest about his goals of not just equalizing everyone, but bringing them down, because that's what happens when you try to equalize income. You bring everybody down. If he were to be honest about that and give a philosophical defense, the American people would reject it resoundingly. So instead, he tries to turn conservatives into the enemy. And let me tell you, it's incredibly effective when it's not met with powerful, courageous, profound articulation of our ideas. And we've seen that when there is a vacuum on our side, that hate-filled rhetoric just rams through. And I want to talk in particular, since we're with the Clare Boothe Luce Policy Institute, I want to talk particularly about this whole notion of a war on women. You know, Obama hasn't just kept his divisive, hateful rhetoric to class warfare or the war against women. It's been dividing young people, turning young people against old people, turning young people against businesses and corporations, dividing us based on our faith, dividing us, of course, based on race. This was supposed to be a post-racial presidency, and yet racial tensions are higher than ever, perhaps, in this country in terms of trusting one another and thinking the best of one another. He's divided us based on immigration, saying that conservatives are the enemy because we have a different philosophy on granting amnesty and that sort of thing. But the war against women is probably the most stark example of how he has tried to pit Americans against one another. Now, I will say, I think there actually probably is a war against women happening here, but it's not coming from the conservative side. It's a shame that we're using words like war against women, but I'll get to that in a minute. But the reality is that this administration used that Health and Human Services mandate not to have a discussion about religious liberty and what religious organizations should be compelled to do, but instead to use it as an opportunity to say, aha, we told you conservatives hate women. They want to take women back to the Stone Ages. They want to deprive them of their, they call it reproductive justice, because conservatives do not believe that religious organizations should be compelled to provide an insurance program that covers something that's antithetical to their beliefs. So because of that very rational explanation, conservatives despise women. They are engaged in an assault. This is the kind of language that they used. Conservatives are involved in an assault. We are actually waging a war against women. Women's health needs are increasingly under attack by conservatives. That's what they say. The language is pretty serious stuff, but my favorite, I have to give you my favorite example of the whole war on women mantra coming from the left, is Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. She always has good stuff. But Sheila Jackson Lee talking about this conservative, us, get it? Okay, we are attacking women because we hate women. Our assault on women, Sheila Jackson Lee said, quote, "I think the next act," by conservatives, "will be dragging women out of patient rooms into the streets and screaming over their bodies as they get dragged out of getting access to women's health care." Seriously. Okay, seriously, that's what we're going to do? It is unbelievable. There's no fact, nothing to back up such a profoundly misleading statement that only is put out there to incite hatred and mistrust, a mistrust of our intentions, of our goodness, so that when any issue comes up in Congress or in the public discourse, statements like this and statements that the president has said, our administration has said, will nullify objections from conservatives on any issue, particularly on issues relating to anything related to women, which of course for the left, by the way, runs the gamut between A and B, abortion to birth control. That's all we seem to care about, according to them. But it absolutely is intended to silence our side. And sometimes it's pretty effective. Particularly among conservative men, they look at this and like, whoa, I guess I can't talk about issues relating to women. You know what? Oh my gosh. Absolutely, they have to talk about issues related to women because those are issues that affect everybody. Women are concerned about the same thing that men are concerned about. But let's look at what the left is saying about women. Let's look how tolerant and open-minded the left is. Again and again, let's see, Hilary Rosen, and I'm going to mention a conservative woman. Hilary Rosen said of Ann Romney, the wife of Mitt Romney, that she has actually never worked a day in her life because she is a stay-at-home mom. Okay, as a stay-at-home mom, and any mom knows, it's much harder to stay home with those babies than it is to go to work. I'll tell you that. It is very tough to be a stay-at-home mom. How about Democrat chairman? He's the chairman of the Democrat committee in South Carolina. He's on the left. He's just a profound raging liberal. And Dick Harpootlian, I love that name. Dick Harpootlian compared Governor Nikki Haley, to Eva Braun. Did you hear anybody on their side condemn that as vicious and hate-filled? No, nothing. Nikki Haley, by the way, has suffered disproportionately, as all conservative women do, by these ridiculous character assaults. Attack, attack, attack. While she was running for governor, she was constantly accused of having an adulterous affair. Okay, it was ridiculous. There was not a single scintilla of evidence to back that up. In fact, Nikki Haley said, if you bring up one piece of evidence, I am out of this race. Nobody could bring up anything. And yet the liberal media insisted on putting that paragraph in every single article it wrote throughout that entire campaign to impugn her character. It was wrong. It was an assault on women by the left. Did the president pick up the phone and call Nikki Haley to see if she was okay after Dick Harpootlian compared her to Eva Braun? No. He did not. Like he called Sandra Fluke, and he called Sandra Fluke's parents to see if they were okay and aren't they proud. Let me just tell you what my mom would do if I had testified about my need for unlimited contraception. Okay, she would not be proud. She really wouldn't. And by the way, that's a reasonable conversation for us to have as a country. Rush Limbaugh was inartful perhaps in the way he brought it all up, but nobody else was touching that with a 10-foot pole. But the notion that women are somehow entitled to unlimited birth control paid for by the government, that is an issue that we should be talking about as a culture. But we're not supposed to do that. This chairman, another raging leftist, John Walsh, criticized United States Senator Scott Brown. I know he's a man, but this has a point. Criticized him for, in a television ad, folding laundry because he was trying to be an honorary girl. How about that? I know, I love how you guys are like, ooh, you're not supposed to say that sort of thing. Bill Maher, of course, is called Sarah Palin, every name in the book. Has called Michelle Bachmann, every name in the book. David Letterman has done it. My favorite, Chris Matthews has done it again and again and again, insulting women. Maher called Bachmann mentally retarded. Of course, Letterman attacked Sarah Palin's daughter. If she was 14, give me a break. Nothing ever happened. It is profound hypocrisy, and that is a theme that runs through my book, how incredibly hypocritical the left has been in ripping this country apart, claiming to be the great champions and defender of women, yet they will only defend liberal women, and their policies are systematically wreaking havoc on the very groups they claim to be championing. Women, it's a perfect example. Highest poverty rate in 17 years as a result of the absurd economic policies of this administration, the job-killing policies of this administration. The extreme poverty rate for women is at an all-time high. That means those women in America who are living below half the poverty line. We should not have women living below half the poverty line in this country, yet 7.5 million of them are. More women were not in the workforce as of April 2012. 53 million women were not in the workforce. Of course, the administration no, they didn't actually. I'm not even going to go there. Women are not getting their jobs back as fast as men. And of course, skyrocketing gas prices, skyrocketing food prices are hitting women harder. Those women that are in poverty, it's hitting them harder than it is hitting men. And we don't hear any concern from this administration, no empathy about how women are suffering right now. It's all about how conservatives want to attack them. There is no discussion, no concern about the economic situation that women are currently in. It's also amazing to me how hypocritical this administration is in how it actually does treat women. Supposedly, conservatives want to launch an all-out assault. Well, let's talk about the Boys Club. That's what the White House has been known for. It's not some secret. I'm not pulling this out of thin air. You can look in my book. It's got citation after citation. It was known to be, particularly in the beginning, but things haven't changed, the Boys Club. Anita Dunn, who was the White House communications director, said she was, quote, shocked to find that Obama's campaign back in 2008 had more to do with frat house antics than third-wave feminism. Christina Romer, who was the former head of the Council of Economic Advisors to the president, said she felt like, quote, a piece of meat every time she went to the Oval Office. Christina Romer. Many women said they felt invisible during meetings with Obama. They felt dominated by the men in the room and Obama's deference to them. Anita Dunn said that, quote, looking back, this place would be in court for a hostile workplace because it actually fit all of the classic legal requirements for a genuinely hostile workplace to women. Now, when a senior staffer went to Barack Obama and complained about, believe it or not, Rahm Emanuel's attitude towards women, apparently he was, I know, it's shocking, his rough and chauvinistic manner, you know what Obama's response was? Look, I really need Rahm. That was his response. Then, as the environment continued to deteriorate, finally Obama got the women staffers together and had a dinner with them to address their concerns. Okay, the meeting began with Obama looking at his watch and saying, are there genuine concerns I need to know about? That's how concerned he was. I know, I love y'all's expressions. They're really great. I wish they could be seen out there. Again and again, he ignored the concerns of women. He ignores the concerns of women who are going to be affected negatively by Obamacare, all of the taxes that are going to hit the middle class, the medicine cabinet tax, the limitations on what we can put into our flex spending accounts. But it is also the sheer way in which Obama has patronized women that is so offensive and that belies what complete hypocrisy this war on women mantra is. Campbell Brown, who was a former CNN anchor, had a great piece about a year ago about how paternalistic this president and his administration have been towards women. She said, he makes reference to how women are smarter than men. It's all so tired. That kind of fake praise showered upon ones who those think are easy to impress. She said that he is having a hard time connecting with tens of millions of Americans, many of those who are women, who feel economic opportunity is gone and they are losing hope. In an effort to win them back, Mr. Obama is employing a tone that can come across as grating and even condescending. I love this part. She said, most women don't want to be patted on the head or treated as wards of the state. They simply want to be given a chance to succeed based on their talents and skills. Isn't that so, so true? And yet we are being treated as though we either are wards of the state or we should be. Prime example, the life of Julia on President Obama's website. The notion, and by the way, it was not the life of Bob. Please take that into account. It was the life of Julia, to suggest that women in particular need the beneficent hand of government from cradle to grave, reaching down and helping us so we can achieve some level of happiness. But without the government, we can't do it. By the way, there's no man in the life of Julia. She suddenly had a child, had a child, but the man was nowhere to be seen. I guess it's the fish needs, bicycle thing, Gloria Steinem thing. Again and again, Stephanie Cutter, a couple weeks ago, an associate of Obama, an advisor to Obama, said women are not concerned about what's happened over the last 4 years. I beg to differ. We are really concerned about what's happened over the last 4 years. I was particularly appalled at something that was on Obama's website. I think it was last week. It came down very quickly after the outrage by conservatives. But this whole notion of support this administration, quote, I'm sorry, it's rude, forgive me. Support this administration, quote, like your lady parts depend on it. That was on our president's website. It was a cartoon. You can find it all over the web if you want confirmation that he actually did this. I love Dana Loesch. She tweeted out shortly after that, I'll support this administration like one of my lady parts depends on it. We conservatives call it a brain. I know, I thought it was such a boom. But it's incredibly patronizing to diminish women in this way and to assume that their concerns are irrelevant, that they don't actually have them. But that is what this administration has had to do in order to ram through its philosophy. I won't even get into the part, I'll just mention it briefly because I'm passionate about it, how this president is completely ignoring and truly enabling the real war against women that's happening in Muslim countries around the world. He talks about one of his primary foreign policy objectives is to ensure reproductive justice around the world. In all nations around the world, that means abortion on demand, all around the world. And yet, do you ever hear him condemn Islamic nations that will not allow a woman to set foot outside her doorstep without a male chaperone? No, you never do. Do you hear him condemn anything that's going on in Afghanistan where we have shed our blood? And he never defends these girls who have acid thrown on them because they're going to school now. Or the notion that the ruling religious group in Afghanistan just issued a mandate and a proclamation that men are fundamental and women are secondary. And the president of Afghanistan endorsed that ruling. Did this president ever use his enormous power and influence to say that is an assault on women, on their dignity, on their basic rights? Never. There has been dead silence from this administration. In fact, the State Department has actually said that they are not going to be involved. They said, quote, gender issues are going to have to take a backseat to other priorities. There's no way we can be successful if we maintain every special interest and pet project. Women are being slaughtered around the world in the name of Islam, and yet this president says nothing about it. What kind of hypocrisy is that to suggest that conservatives want to assault the rights of women simply because they want to protect the rights of religious organizations to be able to practice and live out their faith? That is appalling. The reason he is doing it, and the reason I wrote this book, is to impress upon the American people there is a goal behind all of this. There's a goal to force through a very radical left agenda. But there's also the goal that troubles me even more than that, as troubling as that is, and it is very troubling. But this effort to literally silence half of the American population, whoever doesn't agree with him. Barack Obama doesn't, and his administration, they don't want to get into the messiness of democracy, that back and forth upon which we are founded. And I will tell you this, I think the Obama administration's conduct and the way they have tried to divide us and rip us apart is a ringing endorsement for conservatism and the fact that our ideas triumph every time they are put in direct contrast to the left's idea. Don't ever think that he's not articulating his ideas because he doesn't have them. The Obama administration and the leftists within have a very definite agenda. They have ideas, but they cannot talk about them because they would be rejected by the American people. Their ideas belie this incredible and inherent arrogance in the wisdom of government and the intellectual and liberal elite over that of hardworking Americans. I know that this country is far better than that, and I just pray that 50% of the American people that is somehow lulled into complacency or convinced that conservatives are filled with hate and rage, I pray that they will look into what we believe and that they will cease to be convinced by this bankruptcy on the left, by these sheer, these vicious tactics of destroying really our character, destroying our motives and who we are, and that the American people will instead wake up and say, wait a minute, there are no ideas being talked about here except on the side of conservatism, and there must be something very menacing that they are trying to hide. And I thank the Clare Boothe Luce Institute and the Heritage Foundation for making sure that those ideas will eventually triumph. Thank you all so much. God bless you. Yes, ma'am.
What a good talk, Kate, and what a great book. All you millions watched on C-SPAN. You need to read this book. You need to buy this book to
And then
get
share
some
it with
insights.
others.
You know, the one insight that hit me, I mean, I watched this as closely as anyone, but when you said they want to keep us in the middle class.
Yeah, I know.
And then I flashed back to last night, the 90-minute debate, and one participant, Simpleton, who said middle class over and over again. The truth is most conservatives are middle income, and that's a great thing.
Exactly.
And we aspire, many of us, to be higher income. It's to keep us middle income. That is a key to socialism, really. When you go to Europe, they talk about we need to all be middle class. Well, sure, that's great. But they want to keep us. That's an insight, Kate. I
Right.
didn't have
Why shouldn't
before.
we all be affluent if we want to be? It's
Right.
whatever you want. You should be able to seek
They're
and
going to
achieve
bring
that.
us all down
Right.
to middle class.
Right.
Middle income.
Right.
Terrific.
Right.
We have a microphone here. Why don't I let you call on people? Oh, two microphones, yes. If you wouldn't mind, would you give your name and affiliation and speak up into the microphone so that it can all be recorded on C-SPAN? Thank you.
Right. Love that hand shooting up. You know, Castro at the Democrat National Convention mentioned we want to help people get to the middle. It's not just Obama, but it's his whole administration that wants to keep people pigeonholed in certain classes. Yes.
Oh, my name is Nicole Madden. I'm an intern at the Heritage Foundation.
Great.
And what advice would you give to argue with young women in their 20s who have been brainwashed by the other side? What would you recommend saying to convince them otherwise?
Well, you have to talk with them about ideas. You have to question them. I mean, questioning people is probably the best way to get them to wake up. I mean, just talking to them again and again until their eyes glaze over does not work. You have to ask them questions. Why do you believe that? Why? Because realize this, you all who are so young, realize what's happened on the college campuses. You have been brainwashed, literally. And not just in college, in grade school, in middle school, high school. You have been totally utterly brainwashed. There are speech codes on college campuses where if you stand in this square or circle, you may say whatever you want. You have your First Amendment rights, but you step outside that square or circle and you are bound by a campus speech code. If you violate it, you can be sent to sensitivity training. So a lot of what you want to say to these young women is going to shock them because you're not allowed to actually say some of those things on their campus because it could be perceived to be insulting to persecuted groups, which, by the way, does not include white conservative women. We are not counted. Neither are you white men, sorry. Neither are you Christians or you Jews, pretty much. But everybody else is subject to those rigorous speech codes. But what I just said, if I made an offhand comment about Sandra Fluke, when I say that on college campuses, even among conservatives, there is this collective because I am not allowed to say that on college campuses. They want to shut us down. So it's a painful process to try to awaken our young friends, but you have got to try to talk to them. Look for issues that you can find some consensus on. That was Ronald Reagan's way of bringing people to his perspective. Please don't go in there and think about the most incendiary issue that the nation is thoroughly split on and use that as your core issue to try to bring people to conservatism. I would talk about free market economics, about lowering that this is the one argument I would start with. How Ronald Reagan, when he became president, with a Democrat Congress, by the way, how he lowered that highest income tax bracket from 70%, it was 70%. The government somehow thought it had a right to 70% of your income. Barack Obama thinks he has a right at least to 40%, and that's only the beginning. 70%. Ronald Reagan was able to lower it to 28%. And the left would say, oh my gosh, the government's not going to have any revenue. What are you going to do about the deficit? Income to the federal government, revenue to the federal government doubled for that income tax bracket. It works. Why did that happen? Because, of course, more people were free to try to achieve prosperity. There were more assets in the private sector for businesses to grow and expand, and businesses were encouraged. Regulations were rolled back, and so prosperity was encouraged and ensued. So use those facts that are irrefutable and present them, and you know what? You will see the Great Awakening taking place. And give them books that will start to open their mind, books about relevant topics that a lot of people are talking about, and they will actually start to read them. A lot of young people come to conservatism through books by Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, some of the folks that you see out there, Rush Limbaugh, on the front pages. That's their first introduction to conservatism. Share those books with them. Yes.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Renner, also an intern at the Heritage Foundation. And I just had a follow-up question about, you said skyrocketing prices hit women more than men.
Yes.
Robert Rector has a piece out on marriage, how that reduces child poverty, and he says the leading cause is because there's an absence of married fathers in the home. Is that tied to what you meant when you said it hits women more?
Yes, I was talking about the high rate of poverty among women right now. And even those women, a lot of women who are not in poverty are right above the poverty line. And so obviously gas prices that have doubled over the past, more than doubled over the past 4 years. Good grief, in some places we're looking at tripling of gas prices. That is devastating to a single mom, 3 kids, trying to get their kids to school, trying to get to work. That is actually something that can stop them in their tracks. It's completely debilitating. The cost of food for these women who are either right on the line of poverty or in poverty. But absolutely, the absence of fathers in homes, the absence of stable 2-parent families has so much to do with increasing levels of poverty among women. That is one of the best indicators of success is whether or not you're married and stay married. And we've seen under this administration the literal explosion in entitlement programs. And we're not supposed to talk about that either because somehow that makes us racist or sexist. We have got to talk about that. A society that is somehow dependent upon its government, Alexis de Tocqueville warned us that once a majority of the American people become dependent on the government, the democracy is in peril. We have to wake up to that fact. We're not saying that half of the population is lazy, by the way. We're just saying that the government is trying to ensnare them and enslave them in a dependency on government, and government doesn't scale itself back willingly. We have to do it. Government is greedy, and it wants people to be dependent upon it because it knows best. That's what the left thinks. The left knows best. We have to champion the rights of individuals to have that opportunity for prosperity. Watering down welfare requirements that this administration has done, that is an assault, I'll use that word, on those who are in poverty, because it discourages them from seeking that independence. To suggest that running errands for a neighbor qualifies as work, I don't think so. I don't think so. That's not real reform. Yes.
Hi, I'm Catherine Rodriguez with the Clare Boothe Luce Institute. I know you know this, and at the Clare Boothe Luce Institute, we know this too, and some of the students in this room may also have experienced this, but sometimes being a conservative campus activist, even as a woman, can feel like a really lonely thing, especially when you're confronted with all these feminists around you, and for some reason it's like women need that extra push, especially. So I wondered if there were any words of support or encouragement that you could offer to the young women here and also young women who are watching.
Absolutely. Women do need the extra push. When I was elected, some women, not all of them, when I was elected chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia, I didn't think anything of being the first woman. I really didn't. It's very rude of me. I didn't think anything, like whatever. And the media went nuts, of course, when I'm going to be called chairman. They thought that was appalling. But then I went around the state, and I met with, it was sort of my tour to getting to know you. And everywhere I went, women came up to me, literally in tears, saying, I never thought I'd see the day when a woman was chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia. Completely changed my thinking about women in leadership roles, women standing up for what they believe in. And I realized sometimes we women need an extra push. I started this immediately after that. I started a leadership training program for women. And on the first day of the class, I asked how many of you would consider running for office someday. One little timid hand went up. And I asked, why not? What's with you guys? Why wouldn't you run for office? And the response was almost universally, I like being in a supportive role. I get that. It's a very natural place for a lot of women. Nurturers, I want to be in a supportive role. But conservatism needs to promote women. They are the majority of the American population, and we need women if our ideas are going to triumph. So consequently, more women need to be involved and more women need to be in leadership positions, because when you look on the TV, you flip through and you only see, a bunch of white men representing conservatism. Sometimes that's a turnoff for women. We like to see people who are like we are, and we get introduced sometimes to new ideas that way. We need to be championing our women. But it is a very lonely thing to be a conservative woman, period, whether you're on campus or not. That is why groups like Clare Boothe Luce are so important, because we need that support. We need the defense, because sometimes our conservative brethren do not always run to our defense like they need to. I'll bring Sarah Palin up as a great example. I actually don't really care what people think, conservatives, whether they love her or not. Defend her, because she is out. When she is attacked for personal reasons, defend her. When Michelle Bachmann is brutally ripped to shreds by some of these comedians, that's always their excuse. Defend her. She's one of the smartest women in Congress. She is courageous. She has stuck her neck out. These women are sticking their necks out. We have this precious girl, a friend of ours who is an activist at Azusa Pacific, Ashley Blackwell, and she is trying to start up a Young Americans for Freedom chapter. And the school has crashed down, and they've said, no, you may not start a YAF chapter because we find some things on their website offensive. That's hysterical. Hysterical that they'll let some of these leftist groups start up, but won't let a Young Americans for Freedom be instituted on this campus. And she is suffering, right? I mean, she's being assaulted by all sides, but she is a courageous young woman. She just had a piece yesterday on foxnews.com. It was great, Ashley Blackwell. But Clare Boothe Luce has run to her defense. So has Young America's Foundation. It is so important that we conservatives stand up, but it is also important that conservative women have a spine of steel and the skin of an armadillo. We need you engaged in the battle. You will absolutely be called every name in the book. Prepare yourself for it. But you know what that means? As Margaret Thatcher said, I am always immensely encouraged when they start calling me names, because it means they have not a single argument left. It means you are winning. Look at you all smiling. That is exactly what we need you to do. It is your moment when the attacks begin. You can either run from the arena, which is their objective, because conservative women are a tremendous threat. And this whole war on women is intended to get us out of the arena, those of us who champion our ideals, particularly we women. When that attack comes, you do have that choice. You can flee or you can stand strong. You can weather the attacks and still at the end be standing. And people will respect you and they will listen to your ideals, and you will have furthered freedom. You will have had this tremendous impact. Remember our founding fathers and all they were willing to suffer, up to death. They were subject to treason. They had committed treason, but they were willing to stand up for what they believe in. I hope we're not going to have to stick our necks out subject to death. But look, we women conservatives are in a very similar position to that of our founding fathers, where we are sticking our necks out, not for publicity, not for money, but for this great God-given notion of freedom, because we believe it is worthy of our defense. Call me any name you want. It pales in comparison to what my mission is, to promoting and protecting freedom for my children. Bring it on. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Kate, my name is Kami Bhatt. I write for the Pakistani Spectator. And, I have worked on the Hill. You have worked on the Hill. And, Sheila Jackson is a very, very tough lady.
Yes.
Even to work with. But I remember after September 11, she was the only one who opposed our involvement in Afghanistan. And today you could see that we are spending $2 billion per week there. And what are we getting? So you think this lady has some special insight that whole country was unable to see, but she was able to perceive that what would be the end.
Right.
I'm from that part of the world, and I feel like we are wasting our money in that part.
Okay.
I'm from Pakistan, and Pakistani journal are becoming millionaire because of US taxpayers.
Thank you
now,
for your
coming
question.
back to your book, I live 14 blocks from here, and I experienced that African American, except few ladies who are hooked up on check, more baby, more check. They are a lot more conservative than, especially in terms of going to.
What is your question? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think we're really I'm getting the time look in the back. Tell me what your question is.
You are getting upset?
No, I just need your question because we got to wrap up.
My question is that they are more conservative in some sense, especially in terms of going to church.
Okay.
And in terms of their generosity.
Who is they?
African American
young
ladies.
Right.
Yeah. So how can we get
Absolutely, which is one point why it's absurd that I'll take it from there. One reason why it's absurd, this whole notion that conservatives are out to get African Americans. And you look at how it's yet another group that has been systematically undermined by this administration's economic policies. And you know what? Sheila Jackson Lee and some others in the Congressional Black Caucus of 2 years ago stood up and said, this is not working. This administration's policies are not working. They are hurting blacks. They are hurting poor people. And you know what Barack Obama said? He said, enough of this whining. Take off your bedroom slippers and put on your marching shoes. That was extreme arrogance and condescension by the man who claims to be the great champion of African Americans, of women, of young people. All of these groups are suffering under the Obama administration. He has such disregard. He does not have empathy for the sufferings of Americans, nor is he willing to engage in a philosophical conversation about the economic policy that has gotten us into this mess in the first place. Thank you all so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you and talking to you afterwards, but thanks so much for being here, and thank you to Clare Boothe Luce and the Heritage Foundation.
Kate has been a speaker for us so many times that our usual gifts don't work. So come
I
over
have
here.
some coffee mugs.
I know you have those.
I love them.
We got her a copy of the original The Women. This
Oh,
was
that's
the play
great.
that Clare Boothe Luce wrote. Have you seen the
I've
original?
never seen
Oh, you're
it,
going to
so
love
this
it.
is
I mean,
great.
it's an old movie.
My boys will love watching
They
it.
will. It's a wonderful play that Mrs. Luce wrote, decades ago. It's still produced. There was a recent redo of the movie.
It was terrible.
It's not anywhere near as good as the original one here. The funny thing about this play is the entire cast is women. There's not a man in the play, but the play is all about men. We know about that.
Thank you.
And then just
Thank
a
you.
little box of chocolates
Oh,
for a
that's
wonderful
great.
lady.
Thank you very much, so much.
And Kate, on behalf of the Heritage Foundation, we have a few items we want to give to you. Our own Ed Meese here, the former Attorney General of the United States, oversaw the production of the Heritage Guide to the Constitution. This is a book that is good for women as well as men.
Yes.
And a great reference for you. We wanted it, Ed
you,
signed it
Becky.
for you.
Oh, great.
And
Thank
then I
you.
just wanted to mention as we close out today that Mrs. Thatcher's birthday is this weekend.
Oh.
And so we have for you a poster. Lori, stand up here. Come up down to the front here so everybody can see it. We have a poster for you, and show Kate here.
Beautiful. My two favorite people.
And we have a poster for everyone who's here today.
Great.
It will look like this. And then we also have for you a copy of a speech that Mrs. Thatcher gave on courage.
Great.
And she gave it, interestingly enough, at a Heritage Foundation event. The occasion was the presentation of the Clare Boothe Luce Award to Ronald Reagan.
Isn't that great?
So all of these things come together. We have a lady of courage here speaking today to women and men of courage who stand for principle, and we can give gifts that honor two of our favorite heroes, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan.
Thank you, Becky.
Thanks,
so much.
Michelle. Thank you, Kate. It's really been a privilege for us to work together over these last number of years to actually have this Conservative Women's Network monthly event where we bring together outstanding women leaders and future leaders, mostly women, but the occasional man who's welcome too. And now we'd like to ask you to join us for lunch out here in the lobby, and thanks to our two Heritage interns who had the
signing.
microphones today.
And the book signing. Kate will
Oh
sign
yeah,
your book.
Kate has books
if
and
you
she
like.
will be happy to sign.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.